Dramatic CCTV footage emerged today of a mystery woman spotted next to what appears to be the Russian spy and his daughter, who collapsed from a nerve agent attack just minutes later. Video from a restaurant in Salisbury, Wiltshire, is said to show Sergei Skripal, 66, walking next to mystery woman behind his daughter Yulia, 33, near the Zizzi branch and park bench at the centre of the investigation. Scotland Yard counter-terror detectives have taken a copy of the CCTV published by the Daily Mirror as part of the investigation, with timings on the clip matching eyewitness accounts that police have received. The stocky man believed to be Mr Skripal walks past the restaurant with the two women at 4:08 p.m. before a police car speeds past at 4:15 p.m. A paramedic is seen running at 4:16 p.m. and then an ambulance car at 4:18 p.m. The video was revealed as nearly 200 military personnel were drafted in to help with the probe into the attack, and it emerged police now believe the Skripals and a police sergeant were poisoned at his suburban home. Around 180 troops, including Royal Marines and chemical weapons specialists, will be handling and testing the huge amount of evidence being gathered as investigators piece together a trail of poison around Salisbury. Mr Skripal, Yulia and Detective Sergeant Nick Bailey, a 38-year-old married father of two, are all in hospital after coming into contact what has been called a very rare nerve agent. Mr Skripal and his daughter are in a very serious condition, the Home Secretary said this morning. Police have not confirmed where they were poisoned or how, but detectives are said to be working on the theory all three came into contact with the nerve agent at Mr Skripal's suburban home. A source close to the investigation told Mail Online officers now believe Nick Bailey was one of the first to visit Mr Skripal's home and enter the premises after the poisoning incident on Sunday. He became ill at some point afterwards and took himself to hospital after visiting Sergeant Bailey yesterday. Wiltshire Police's Acting Chief Constable Keir Pritchard said the hero policeman was well and sat up, but he said that he is not the Nick that I know and added he's very anxious. He's very concerned. He did his very best on that night. Another officer who went to see him said he was deathly pale, adding the Chief Constable was shocked by how pale Nick looks. A close colleague said he's by no means out of the woods yet. Scotland Yard said the military would be removing vehicles and objects from Salisbury town centre. Chemical weapons experts will meanwhile be working on the trail of the nerve agent around the city. Defence Secretary Gavin Williamson said our armed forces have stepped up to support the police in their investigation in Salisbury, building on the vital expertise and information already provided by our world-renowned scientists from the Defence Science and Technology Laboratory at Porton Down. We have the right people with the right skills to assist with this crucial inquiry. This is a dreadful incident and my thoughts remain with the victims and their families, a Scotland Yard spokesman said. The counter-terrorism policing network has requested assistance from the military to remove a number of vehicles and objects from the scene in Salisbury town centre as they have the necessary capability and expertise. The public should not be alarmed and the public health advice remains the same. The military has the expertise and capability to respond to a range of contingencies. The Ministry of Defence regularly assists the emergency services and local authorities in the UK. Military assistance will continue as necessary during this investigation. This morning, Home Secretary Amber Rudd visited the park where Mr Skripal and his daughter were found in a catatonic state on Sunday. She later visited DS Bailey in hospital, asked about the condition of Mr Skripal, his daughter and DS Nick Bailey. Ms Rudd said, still very serious for the two people who were indeed the subject of this outrageous attack and for the police officer I understand it's still serious, although he's still conversing and engaging. Ms Rudd did not reveal any further details about the substance, how it was deployed or who used it. Speaking in Salisbury, she added, I understand people's curiosity about all those questions, wanting to have answers, and there will be a time to have those answers. But the best way to get to them is to give the police the space they need to really go through the area carefully, to do their investigation and to make sure that they have all the support that they need. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov meanwhile dismissing claims his country was involved as baseless propaganda. He said it is necessary not to immediately run out on TV screens with unfounded allegations. Investigators extended the cordon around Mr Skripal's house in Salisbury Wiltshire to 150 yards as the political row intensifies over the alleged poison plot. Detectives in Hampshire suits were seen at the property yesterday and 3 forensic evidence tents have been set up outside. Aerial photographs of the suburban house now at the center of the probe reveal police have erected evidence tents around all 3 entrances to his home, with 1 in front of it and 2 in the back garden, one of which is next to a lane. Pictures also revealed that Mr Skripal hung a Union Jack flag across a window at his home, suggesting he was a proud citizen of the country who took him in after his secret work for MI6. As an ex-Russian double agent and his daughter remain critically ill in hospital. Here is a timeline of how police cordoned off areas around Salisbury this week during their investigation: Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Yesterday, police last night confirmed 21 people, including Mr Skripal, his daughter, and Sergeant Bailey, were treated in hospital in relation to the attack after previously claiming the number was fewer than 10. It is not clear how many of the 21 people were police officers, medical staff or members of the public. Mr Skripal, who passed secrets to Britain while working for Russian intelligence, and his daughter Yulia are believed to have visited the Zizzi restaurant and the Mill pub in Salisbury before they were found unconscious on a bench near the Maltings shopping centre on Sunday afternoon. It emerged last night police were called to reports of 2 drunks acting strangely on a bench, but were met by the pair slumped in a catatonic state. Initial police investigations appeared to focus on them being poisoned while they were out, but yesterday's police activity suggests they could have become infected beforehand. One line of inquiry is that the nerve agent used against them was developed in a Russian laboratory before being transported by a would-be assassin in a sealed container to Britain. Counter-terrorism officers believe Mr Skripal could have been infected hours before he showed symptoms. The agent used is not thought to be the widely known sarin VX or Novichok, but a substance described by Whitehall sources as exotic. Hamish de Breton Gordon, ex-commander of the Army's Chemical, Biological, Radiological and Nuclear Regiment, said this was quite clearly a very professional operation. These things are made in big government laboratories. It reduces in toxicity over time, so if it was made in Russia 2 weeks ago, then by the time it was administered its effectiveness would be reduced significantly. Zizzi, the Mill pub, Mr Skripal's house, his son and wife's graves, part of the local hospital, the ambulance station of the vehicle which took him to the hospital and an office block next to Zizzi's have all been taken over as part of the investigation. Mr Skripal is believed to have visited his wife's grave as recently as March 1st. Police were also seen searching 2 vehicles, a maroon BMW at police recovery yard and a blue Mercedes people carrier believed to have been used to fetch Yulia from the airport a few days ago. After visiting Sergeant Bailey at Salisbury District Hospital's intensive care unit, Mr Pritchard said 21 people were taken to hospital after the Skripals were found poisoned. Sources claim 3 other police officers were among the 21, but the identities of everyone else remain unknown. A police spokesman told Mail Online Sergeant Bailey fell ill a short time after the incident unfolded. Speaking last night, Mr Pritchard said of the wider investigation, multiple people have been treated, around 21 people, including the man and the woman found on the bench. A number of those have been through the hospital treatment process. They are having blood tests, support and advice. The only people still in hospital are Mr Skripal, Yulia and Sergeant Bailey. While the detective sergeant is sitting up and speaking, there are fears former intelligence officer Mr Skripal may die. A source told The Times, "The feeling is that he is not going to make it out of this. I think it could be more positive for Yulia. They are hopeful that she might be able to pull through." Sergeant Bailey's cousin, Andrew Bailey, 50, told the newspaper that the father of 2 had joined the police at 17 and was widely respected. "What we know so far about the attack on Russian spy Sergei Skripal," he said, "he's pretty well decorated, so I reckon he must be a good copper. He's the most honest person I know. He didn't hesitate to run to the help of those 2 poor people. His first instinct would have been to assist them. His wife, Sarah, will have been distraught by what's happened. So it's great news that he appears to be pulling through." Sources told Mail Online yesterday that 3 other emergency service workers rushed to hospital became contaminated when giving Mr Skripal and his daughter first aid. Now the line of inquiry appears to be that Sergeant Bailey was not a first responder and was instead part of the wider investigation, possibly becoming contaminated retracing the Skripal steps. He was initially discharged from hospital after being admitted with minor symptoms but returned and was rushed to intensive care when his condition deteriorated. A source told Mail Online there were 4 officers taken to hospital following Sunday's incident, one of which was Nick Bailey. The 3 others who were quickly discharged are believed to have given Mr Skripal and his daughter first aid. Nick Bailey was originally thought to have been part of this team, however, as a detective sergeant. He would not have automatically attended the scene. It's possible he could have become ill after visiting another one of the sites of interest, which includes the restaurant, his home and the graveyard where his loved ones are buried. Yesterday, the graves of Mr Skripal's son Alexander and his wife Ludmila were also taped off. Mr Skripal's 43-year-old son Alexander is reported to have died last year while on holiday in St. Petersburg after being rushed to hospital with liver failure. But a Russian news agency in the city said it had not been able to find any record of his death. Mr Skripal's wife Ludmila died in October 2012 at the age of 59. Her death certificate said she died from disseminated endometrial carcinoma, womb cancer, which she was diagnosed with. In Russia, police and ambulance crews wearing full protective hazmat suits were also pictured at the Ashleywood Recovery Garage in Salisbury last night, where they were seen examining a maroon BMW believed to belong to ex-Kremlin agent Mr Skripal. Officers examining the vehicle were decked out in full protective kit and appeared to be taking special precautionary measures, throwing away their protective equipment after use. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Theresa May paid tribute to Sergeant Bailey and the 20 others injured in the attack. She said last night, "I would like to pay tribute to all of the emergency services in Salisbury, those who reacted to the initial call on Sunday and those who continue to respond to this appalling and reckless attack. In particular, my thoughts are with Detective Sergeant Nick Bailey, one of the first responders, who remains in a serious condition in hospital. We are all thinking of him, his family, friends and colleagues, and the 2 other victims, at what is an incredibly difficult time. The events of Sunday are a stark reminder, if ever one was needed, of the dangerous situations our emergency services face and the dedication and courage they display every day in order to keep us safe." When Wiltshire Police's Mr Pritchard emerged from Salisbury District Hospital yesterday afternoon, he also paid tribute to his colleague. He said he was sitting up and speaking to his wife Sarah, 37, and mother Susan, 67, but was very anxious and concerned. Mr Pritchard said in a statement, "I have visited Nick in hospital this afternoon and I can confirm that he is conscious, talking and engaging with people. Of course, he still remains in a serious but stable condition. But I am deeply relieved to have visited him and spoken with him in person. I have also met with Nick's family and relayed our deep concern for their welfare. We have all been deeply appreciative of the outpouring of support from staff, public and around the country. We are very grateful for this. I would like to reassure you all that Nick is receiving medical intervention and care from highly specialist medical practitioners experienced in these matters. Nick is a hugely popular member of staff and all our thoughts are with him. The welfare of all of my officers and staff is of paramount importance to me." A former Metropolitan Police Commissioner has backed calls for 14 other deaths to be re-examined after the incident in Salisbury. Lord Blair spoke out after Labour MP Yvette Cooper called on Home Secretary Amber Rudd to review the deaths in Britain that have been linked to Russia by US intelligence agencies. According to BuzzFeed, he told BBC Radio 4's Today programme, "I am certainly of a view that this extraordinary attack in Salisbury is a good call to say. As Yvette Cooper has said, let's have a good look at this again and see whether there is some pattern here of people who go out jogging and fall dead, and who are found dead in their house in Surrey and so on. There has got to be something here that at least is worth looking at." Ms Cooper, the chairman of the Home Affairs Select Committee, has also suggested Ms Rudd consider going to the UN Security Council and asking for a statement from all nations to provide assistance. But the Home Secretary insisted now is not the time to investigate what is actually only, at the moment, rumor and speculation. BuzzFeed claimed the Americans see Britain as the crucible of assassinations carried out by Russian hitmen. after a 2-year investigation into suspicious deaths in this country. The deaths include that of British property wheeler dealer Scott Young, who was found impaled on railings in London in 2014, Vladimir Putin's exiled enemy Boris Berezovsky, who was found dead at his Surrey mansion in 2013, and runaway businessman Alexander Perepolichin, who died in the same county a year earlier. Sergeant Bailey has been with the force since 2002 and in 2016 got a Certificate of Excellence for single-handedly putting a serial rapist behind bars. The police officer trawled through and reopened a number of old cases, as well as investigating a series of fresh allegations against Arthur Bonner in what was described as a complex and serious case after Bonner was jailed for 14 years. Wiltshire Police's then Chief Constable Mike Veal praised his dedication, hard work and outstanding professionalism. His investigations into the rapist spanned 2 years. He said afterwards, "It's a really nice feeling. It was a very long, emotionally draining investigation for the families as well. It was very difficult not to get their hopes up. But we got justice in the end." You live and breathe that type of investigation for a long time. It's on your mind constantly. And it's very difficult to switch off. It's such a big thing. It affects so many people in such a significant way. To see a full trial go through and to see those 12 members of the public as the jury listen to the evidence you have presented to the court and to see them say we believe he is guilty is a really exhilarating feeling. New pictures emerged yesterday of the immediate aftermath of the attack and were taken at the Maltings shopping precinct in Salisbury only 2 minutes after the Skripals were airlifted to hospital. The photos were taken by writer Don Belk, 30, who heard sirens and the air ambulance. Mr. Belk of Salisbury said, "I went to see what was going on just as the air ambulance was taking off and the land ambulance was leaving. These pictures are the immediate aftermath of what had happened. I don't think anyone there really had a clue what was going on. The police officer is very close to the area where they were taken ill. The officers had actually lifted part of the cordon and at one point there were 2 members of the public walking very near to the bench and the bag as well. They started off with quite a big cordon but did begin to take some of it down. It remains unclear who is responsible for poisoning the pair. But the attack has stoked tensions between Britain and Russia amid suspicions of state responsibility." Former British ambassador to Russia Sir Andrew Wood said that the assassination attempt was more serious given a policeman was among the injured. Defense Secretary Gavin Williamson told GMB yesterday, "Russia is becoming an ever-increasing threat. Russia is changing the way they fight and raise the level of conflict. We have to change the way we deal with it." A lab run by the Russian security services is among just a handful of facilities which could make a very rare nerve agent which poisoned a Russian spy. It was claimed today. The huge police team now investigating the attack on former double agent Sergei Skripal are hoping the chemical makeup of the toxin used will show where it was manufactured. Chemical weapons experts say the sarin or sarin-like nerve agent used in the attack was probably made in a state-run laboratory somewhere in the world. One of the labs in the frame is the Yasenovo facility run by Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service, the SVR, according to The Sun. Hamish de Breton Gordon, ex-commander of the Army's Chemical, Biological, Radiological and Nuclear Regiment, told the Mail, "This was quite clearly a very professional operation. These things are made in big government laboratories. It reduces in toxicity over time, so if it was made in Russia 2 weeks ago then by the time it was administered its effectiveness would be reduced significantly." He added, "Nerve agents cannot be cooked up in a shed. An agent needs to be made in a well-funded laboratory by a highly trained team of scientists." The Home Secretary has meanwhile described the chemical as very rare. Detectives are understood to be moving away from the theory that the nerve agent was sprayed directly at Skripal. A source told Mail Online they are instead believed to be focusing more on the possibility that poison was added to his food or drink at some point before he collapsed. It is hoped the composition of the substance will help investigators work out where the agent was manufactured. Experts say the clear liquids can be made at only a few laboratories in the world, mostly government-controlled. The first modern nerve agents, including sarin, which was released by a Japanese doomsday cult onto the Tokyo subway in 1995, were first devised by the Germans during World War II. A new generation of the chemical weapons, including the X were later invented by the British during the Cold War. VX is up to 150 times more deadly than sarin. The fact that investigators appear to have ruled out those two suggests the nerve agent used last weekend could be a so-called fourth-generation agent. They were developed by the Soviet Union in the 1980s and 1990s and are said to be even more toxic than VX, which has been classed as a weapon of mass destruction by the UN. These novichoks, meaning newcomer in Russian, are said to be binary weapons, which mean they contain two harmless chemicals which only become toxic when mixed together in an aerosol or missile. This makes them easier to make, store and transport safely, but may also render conventional antidotes ineffective. The Met Police's Assistant Commissioner Mark Rowley, the head of counter-terrorism policing, revealed on Wednesday that the incident was being treated as attempted murder and the pair had been targeted specifically. He declined to specify the nerve agent or how it was administered. He said, having established that a nerve agent was the cause of the symptoms, leading us to treat this as attempted murder, I can also confirm that we believe the two people who originally became unwell were targeted specifically. Our role now of course is to establish who is behind this and why they carried out this act. Hundreds of detectives, forensic officers and analysts are working on the case, which has drawn comparisons to the poisoning of former Russian intelligence officer Alexander Litvinenko on British soil in 2006. Simon Kempton, the Police Federation's operational policing lead, paid tribute to Detective Sergeant Nick Bailey, the police officer critically injured responding to the Salisbury nerve agent attack. He's really highly regarded. Everyone knows Nick and he's really well thought of, he said. He brought a really serious offender to justice, speaking at the police cordon yards away from the bench where Russian double agent Sergei Skripal and his daughter were found. Mr. Kempton said, he's receiving the best possible medical care. The NHS is doing an amazing job. He's in a very serious condition. I haven't been to see him, but my colleagues and his chief constable have. He's sitting up and talking, but his condition is very serious. He's obviously being treated for the effects of nerve agent contamination. Nerve agents, which are chemical weapons, have been used in assassinations and attacks in war zones in recent years. Kim Jong-un's half-brother Kim Jong-nam was killed at an international airport in Malaysia last year in an attack using a nerve agent known as VX. Another well-known nerve agent, sarin gas, killed more than 90 people in a rebel-held area in Khan Sheikhoun, Syria, drawing international condemnation of the Bashar Assad regime. Access to such toxins are tightly regulated, meaning the Salisbury plot would have taken considerable planning to execute. Mr. Rowley reiterated his appeal for anyone who was in Salisbury city centre on Sunday to come forward to help with the missing pieces in the case. Dame Sally Davis, the chief medical officer, said the incident posed a low risk to the public and advised that all the sites the pair were known to have visited had been secured. Public Health England later confirmed it had contacted all first responders who had attended the scene. Russia have denied responsibility for the attack, which comes 7 years after Mr. Skripal was released from the country as part of a spy swap with the US. He had been convicted in his home country in 2006 for passing state secrets to MI6. The investigation has triggered a diplomatic row and prompted crisis talks in Whitehall, but Home Secretary Amber Rudd said police must respond to evidence, not a rumour. It comes as police extended the cordons in Salisbury city centre and also sealed off part of a business park in nearby Amesbury. The Defence Science and Technology Laboratory in nearby Porton Down, which has state-of-the-art equipment to look for trace amounts of substances, is believed to have been involved in examining the substance. The Russian double agent attacked with a nerve agent in Salisbury was close to a consultant who worked with the firm of former British spy Christopher Steele. It was reported yesterday Sergei Skripal, who is fighting for his life in hospital after the incident on Sunday, is said to have been close to an unnamed intelligence expert who carried out work for independent security firm Orbeez Business Intelligence. Orbeez was founded by former British intelligence officer Christopher Steele, who was behind a notorious and controversial dossier on Donald Trump, which claimed Moscow had compromising information on the US president. Mr. Skripal and the Orbeez consultant had become close and were both based in the south of England. The Daily Telegraph reported the paper suggested that Skripal's association with Orbeez and, indirectly, The Trump dossier could have been a motivation behind the attack on him. There are conflicting reports about whether Skripal was retired from the world of espionage. From his time in Russia's military intelligence apparatus, he would have excellent knowledge of the country's tactics and potential contacts. The Times reported this week that he was still giving lectures on KGB tactics, and another Russian exile, Valery Morozov, told Channel 4 News last night that Skripal remained in contact with military intelligence officers at the Russian embassy. A spokesman for the Russian embassy said they are not aware of communication between Skripal and staff. Skripal is a former colonel in Russian military intelligence and was responsible for unmasking dozens of Russian secret agents undercover in Europe. In 2006, he was sentenced to 13 years in a Russian labor camp after being convicted of passing invaluable Russian secrets to the UK. In July 2010, he was one of 4 spies exchanged for 10 Russian agents deported from the US in an historic swap involving red-headed femme fatale Anna Chapman. Since then, he has moved to Salisbury and lived an apparently unremarkable life in Wiltshire Cathedral City, joining a £10 a year Railways social club, drinking in local pubs and spending a reported £40 a week on lottery scratch cards. Police yesterday revealed he and his daughter Yulia, who was visiting from Moscow, were attacked with a nerve agent on Sunday. Both remain in the critical condition.
Where the freaks at?